Before we begin, this story involves the murder of a 14-year-old boy. It happened over 100 years ago, and every person involved is long gone. But the details are real, and some of them are difficult. Take care of yourself first. A pair of horn-rimmed eyeglasses lay in the mud beside a drainage culvert south of Chicago. They had an unusual hinge, a new design. Only 3 pairs with that hinge had been sold in the entire city. One of them belonged to a 19-year-old university student who spoke 15 languages and had never committed a crime in his life. Until last Wednesday. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Today, 2 of the smartest teenagers in America tried to commit the perfect murder. They planned it for months. They were caught because of a pair of glasses. Kenwood, Chicago, spring of 1924. It's a wealthy neighborhood on the south side. Old money, private schools, tree-lined streets where everyone knows everyone. Nathan Lee Opold Jr. is 19. He's already graduated from the University of Chicago. He speaks 15 languages. He studies birds, a published ornithologist before he can legally drink. His IQ has been measured at 210. His best friend is Richard Loeb, 18 years old, the youngest graduate in the history of the University of Michigan. Athletic, charming, handsome, and obsessed with detective fiction. He's read every crime novel he can find, and he's convinced he can do better than any of them. Together, they decide to prove something. Not to anyone else, to themselves. That they are smart enough, superior enough, to commit a murder and never get caught. They spent months planning. They rented a car under a false name. They bought rope, a chisel, hydrochloric acid. They stole a typewriter and used it to draft a ransom note demanding $10,000. Not because they needed the money, but because a ransom would make the killing look like a kidnapping gone wrong. Misdirection. They chose their victim almost at random. Bobby Franks, 14 years old, a neighbor, a distant cousin of Loeb's. He was simply nearby, simply available. On May 21st, 1924, they lured Bobby into the rented car. They killed him with the chisel. They drove south, out of the city, and stuffed his body into a concrete culvert pipe near Wolf Lake in Hammond, Indiana. They poured hydrochloric acid on his face to prevent identification. They mailed the ransom note to his family. The perfect crime. Planned for months by 2 of the brightest minds of their generation. Bobby Franks was a freshman at the Harvard School for Boys. He played tennis. He'd been walking home from school when they pulled up alongside him. It was the kind of neighborhood where you got into a car if someone you knew offered you a ride. Micro cliffhanger 1. The ransom note arrived at the Franks' home on May 22nd. But Bobby's father would never need to pay it. Someone had already found the body, and lying in the mud next to the culvert, something the killers didn't know they'd left behind. The eyeglasses, horn-rimmed, unremarkable except for the hinge. It was a patented design, newly released, and the optician who sold them kept records. Only 3 pairs had been sold in all of Chicago. 2 of the buyers were quickly eliminated. The third was Nathan Lee Opold. When police brought him in for questioning, Lee Opold had an explanation. He was a birdwatcher. He'd been out near Wolf Lake before, studying birds. The glasses must have fallen out of his pocket on a previous visit. A coincidence. It might have held up, except that investigators found the stolen typewriter, and when they compared the type to the ransom note, the letters matched. Lee Opold's father was one of the wealthiest men in Chicago. Loeb's family wasn't far behind. In 1924, that kind of money could buy the best defense in the country. And it did. Micro cliffhanger 2. Both young men confessed. They confessed separately, in detail, with clinical detachment. But their stories didn't match on one point, the most important point. And their lawyer didn't plan to argue that they were innocent. He had something else in mind entirely. Each blamed the other for the killing blow. Lee Opold said Loeb struck Bobby with the chisel. Loeb said Lee Opold did it. Neither showed remorse. They described the planning, the execution, the disposal of the body as though recounting a chess match. They'd done it, they said, to prove that they could, to prove that superior intellect placed them above ordinary morality. The confession transcripts were published in the newspapers. Chicago was horrified. The country was horrified. Two rich boys, barely out of their teens, had murdered a child for sport. The public wanted the death penalty. Enter Clarence Dare, 67 years old, already the most famous defense attorney in America. Leopold's father hired him, not to prove innocence. Both boys had confessed. Darrow's job was to keep them alive. He changed their plea to guilty. No jury trial, the sentence would come from a single judge, John Carver Lee. Everything would come down to Darrow's closing argument. On a sweltering day in August 1924, Clarence Darrow stood in a packed Cook County courtroom and spoke for 12 hours. __BREAK _D895 CF39 __. He didn't argue that Leopold and Loeb were innocent. He didn't argue that what they'd done was excusable. He argued that killing them was wrong. I am pleading for the future, he said. I am pleading for a time when hatred and cruelty will not control the hearts of men. When we can learn by reason and judgment and understanding and faith that all life is worth saving and that mercy is the highest attribute of man. Judge Carver Lee wept, the courtroom wept. On September 10th, he sentenced both to life plus 99 years. No death penalty. He cited their age as a mitigating factor. But everyone in the room knew what had really saved them. 12 hours of one old lawyer's voice, asking whether even the worst crime justifies the state killing in return. Micro cliffhanger 3, Leopold and Loeb entered Stateville Penitentiary together. They wouldn't leave together. On January 28, 1936, Richard Loeb was attacked by a fellow prisoner named James Day. 58 razor wounds. Loeb was 30 years old. He died in the prison infirmary. Leopold served 33 years. In 1958, he was paroled. He left Illinois, moved to Puerto Rico, and disappeared from public life. He earned a master's degree. He worked at a hospital. And he spent his remaining years doing the thing he'd loved before any of it, studying birds. Specifically, trying to save the endangered Puerto Rican parrot from extinction. The man who killed a 14-year-old boy to prove his intellectual superiority spent his last decade trying to prevent a species from dying out. He never expressed remorse in a way that satisfied anyone. He died of a heart attack in 1971. He was 66. Bobby Franks was 14. He was walking home from school. That's the fact that everything else orbits around. The glasses, the typewriter, the confessions, the 12-hour speech. A boy was walking home, and two people who thought they were too smart to face consequences proved only that they weren't. Darrow's question still doesn't have a clean answer. Can a person who killed for sport become something else? Does a life spent saving birds mean anything against a life taken with a chisel? Leopold lived to 66. Bobby Franks didn't make it to 15. Some rooms stay dark no matter how many lights you turn on. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. Follow the Unlit Room wherever you listen. Tell a friend, but maybe don't tell them it's all real until after they've finished. Full story on the main channel. Follow if you're wide awake. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.